The interesting thing about the political division in our country is that it's not by neighborhood or city or area. There's political division within households. And this has led a lot of people to have tense, if not fraught, or completely disconnected relationships with people they really care about. And it seems to me that the perception of a lot of people in those positions is that they have to repair the political disconnect first in order to repair the relationship. And I think that makes sense because if you care about your daughter, your mother, your father, your cousin, whatever it is, you respect their political opinions or you want to. And so if you're in a place where you don't, it affects how you feel about that person because your political opinions are, in many ways, how you see your values actualizing in the world is through decisions the president makes, Congress makes, the legislators, at the state level, and, the judicial system. And so if you disagree on these things, it feels like your values are being questioned by the people you love the most. And so there are ways to have conversations that repair relationships, but also persuade people to coming over to your side. And I think the biggest thing we have to understand is that the media environment is intentionally divided. So you will encounter people in your life that you feel like you agree with them when it comes to values, and you can't understand why you're arguing about politics or the news. That is mostly because the divisive rhetoric that's been pushed, someone made an argument where they said, if you feel like I do about X, Y, and Z thing, then you have to see this political issue the same way. And so their emotions get involved. They feel like they agree with that CNN host, Fox News host, MSNBC host, but really their actual views, if they were to sit down and really think about it for a while, they would probably articulate it in a different way, arrive at a different conclusion. And so we also have to interrogate that within ourselves. Oh, what political ideas do I have that are not totally based in my own original ideas? Is this something I heard somewhere else and it resonated with me? And so I've clung on to this, and anyone who's disagreed with it, I've argued with. To believe that you can love people with different ideas than you is to understand that maybe the ideas we currently held are not the absolute. We can change our mind. We should have the freedom to do that. And so that's really deep, but it's real. And so I've had a lot of political conversations with people. I was an organizer. I knocked doors for political campaigns and community organizing. I've had conversations that start off on completely opposite sides and we find common ground, and there's a formula for doing it effectively, especially if you're talking to people in your family. And I think the biggest thing you have to do is go into it understanding that it's not a debate. It's not an I need to convince them of this exact thing, and if they don't see it exactly as I do, we can't be friends, I've failed, they're on morally a different side from me, because oftentimes that's actually not the case. And people are speaking from a place of sometimes anger, sometimes fear. Politics is about our values, right? And so that comes through, and it leads to these conversations feeling more tense. And so this strategy works really well. It's called AAR. I'm pretty sure it comes from labor organizing, union organizing. It's been around forever. I will teach it to you a little bit differently. So it's affirm, answer, redirect. So one time I knocked this guy's door and he said, "Oh, I see you're wearing a Bernie Sanders shirt. We're not going to agree on anything." And then he basically said that something very extreme. I'm not going to repeat it because it was so extreme this video would get flagged if I said it. And I said, okay, well, that's illegal and violent. It was about immigration, I can say that much. And so I said, I don't agree with every politician on every issue. I'm sure no one does. And that's not something anyone's running on, frankly, because it's illegal. But when I think about what I'm voting on, I think about what is on the table, like increasing Social Security. And Bernie's the only one running that is going to increase Social Security if he gets in office. And my parents have worked really hard their whole lives. They deserve to retire. The companies they've made a lot of money for, that they've worked for, they are doing fine. So why should working people struggle on less money than is needed to survive in America? They've earned their dignity through working their whole lives. So that's the reason I want to vote for Bernie Sanders. Like, is there something that you think about that is on the table that you're considering making your voting decision on? And he touched the side of his house and he said, I almost lost the home. Social Security hasn't been enough for me and my wife. And the house is falling apart. We can't afford to make repairs. She moved away to work on a farm in order for us to get by. And he nearly broke down, and he ended up committing to caucus, which is like Iowa's way of voting for Bernie Sanders in the primary. Now, I employed the affirm, answer, redirect framework to turn that conversation around pretty fast. So I affirmed his concern that it's really the root concern that we don't have enough money to get by and maybe immigrants are taking our jobs, which is rhetoric that we've seen on the news pushed over and over again. But of course, they never hold the corporations accountable that are hiring undocumented people to pay them low wages and keep wages low in America. I wasn't going to get into that. That's pedantic. That's not the heart of his concern. The heart of his concern is about working people not having enough to get by. It's an economic concern. It's about jobs and job security and feeling like they need someone to blame, right, for the conditions. So telling them, hey, yeah, it's actually corporations, and flipping his entire perspective on the economy, that's not going to happen. This is not just saying like, oh, I totally agree with you on that. No, that's not what affirming is. It's like going to the heart of their concern or saying something you agree with. Like, yeah, I can see how you would be mad about that. You don't even have to say what you're mad about isn't real. If it was real, is it something worth getting mad at? Sure. Okay, fine. That's okay to admit. I think a lot of times in these conversations, we bring in who could possibly be hurt by these policies and these ideas, and if this was true everywhere. And we feel like we have to fight for those people. And there's a reason for that. We'll get into it in a second. It's like deep cognitive neuroscience is why that's a thing. But instead, by affirming that concern and talking about Social Security and talking about how hard it is to get by in America, that's affirming. And saying, you know, I get that you believe that. I'm not arguing with that belief. I'm saying, I don't agree with every politician on every issue. And that really answers his question of, you know, why would I vote for someone if I disagree with them on this issue of immigration so extremely? And then you redirect it. What is something you're actually thinking about voting on? And so affirming, answering, and redirecting is a really good way to get people engaging with you in a good faith way. And it helps you establish yourself as someone who's not just debating these strongly held beliefs they have. Instead, you're having a conversation, which I think is really missing in a lot of our political discourse. The other interesting thing is you can drag this out. You can't, or you don't have to AAR all in one response. You can say, when someone says, for example, you know, I don't think people should have SNAP benefits. No one should have food stamps. You have to work for everything you get in America. Maybe you say, yeah, I hear that. I really believe in hard work. I don't think anyone should get anything for free. I think you should have to earn it and deserve it. And maybe that's why I'm upset that corporations have so much profit, but places like Walmart have their full-time employees on food stamps and benefits. So how can they make all of that money when the government's paying their employees' salaries, supplementing their employees' salary? What do you think about that? Have you ever thought about that? And just, now we're mad at someone else. Now we're thinking about a new thing. And you can do it in a really curious way, like, when did you first get mad about that? And then you can bring up the Walmart stuff, which is true, by the way. Walmart, their employees are some of the biggest users of SNAP benefits. That's a good way to turn it around. This is useful even not in the context of talking to like a die-hard I don't know, Kamala Harris supporter, if those exist. I think they do. But like a diehard Democrat who like loves Obama and Kamala Harris, or a Trump supporter, right? There's all kinds of different things you can use AAR for. But I think the biggest thing is knowing you're not having a debate, knowing you're not going in trying to prove a point right. And they might default to arguing, but it's really disarming to not argue back and to get curious. So if they come in hot with like, I saw on the news this, and this. I can't believe people in this town are sending the police to fight ICE, right? Maybe they're upset about that. And they come in with this analysis that like they didn't spend a lot of time getting all of the information on the issue. They're just mad about something they saw on the news, which the news is made to make people mad. It happens, right? That's what it's there for. It's basically propaganda. And so they have all this information and they're upset about it after watching some opinion show. You can be like, that's interesting. Like, what about that makes you mad? What happened? Ask for details. The more you ask for details, the more people realize that they don't actually hold the same entrenched, informed beliefs as they hear on the news. And so I first learned this from Steve Sloman, who is a cognitive neuroscientist. He studies the human brain. And they did this study where they asked people, Congress has written this bill, this policy. They feel they fully understand this policy that they're considering. How well do you understand this policy? And people would rate their level of understanding. Then they would change the question. Congress does not understand this policy. How well do you understand it? People who are fed the question saying Congress understands the policy, they rated their understanding higher. When Congress didn't understand the policy well, that's what the people were told, they rated their understanding lower. So, they tested this in another way. They asked people to draw a bicycle from memory. Most people thought, absolutely, I can draw a bicycle from memory. And the wheels wouldn't be connected with the chain. It would only be connected to one wheel. The pedals wouldn't be connected. Almost no one drew a picture of a functioning bike. So what's going on here? Basically, we humans are tribal creatures. We're not cavemen still, but there's like little bits of that still within us, right? We believe other people in our tribe's knowledge is our own. This is the knowledge illusion. I think I understand, maybe how to fix a bike pretty well, because I ride bikes all the time and I know they've been fixed when they've been broken before. But do I really have that knowledge, or do I just trust that there's someone I know or can pay to fix my bike out there? And so I think my bike can get fixed when it's broken. I assume that knowledge is my own. Same thing with like a toilet. We know someone can come fix the toilet when it's broken, so we think we understand how it works, but many people can't explain how the toilet works. Some can. Good for you. I can't. I don't really know. And so this is very common. It's common in politics. When we see someone's on our team, our tribe, and they say something and we trust them, we trust that they have done the research to form a evidence-based opinion, a well-formed evidence-based opinion. But maybe they didn't. But we agree with them on something else they've said, so we trust that. We should always be looking for evidence for everything people are saying. They should cite it if they're a good reporter or newscaster. A lot of the times the news media is reporting things that are not deeply rooted in research and fact anymore. That's really scary. The rise of opinion news over investigative reporting and true journalism is putting us in a place where people are getting more divided in their respective tribes. And so if someone has you coming in saying, no, that's not true, they don't just feel like they're being attacked. They feel like their tribe is being attacked. But also, what's interesting is in the study, when they asked people, explain to me how a bike works. Explain to me how this works. They would realize they can't do it, and they would rate their own understanding lower, or their own conviction with how sure they are, lower. And so if you ask someone, oh yeah, what was going on with that? I'm not sure. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened? It starts the conversation in a place where they realize maybe this opinion is something they were told to believe by someone else that they don't have the evidence to back up. And you have to do this without ill intent. You can't say, I don't think you actually know about that. You have to say like, oh, that's interesting. What is it about that you find fascinating? What gets you going about that? I don't really know what's going on over in Chicago where ICE is clashing with the police. Tell me what happened. Even if you know, it's okay to ask. You can say, I don't know much about that. It's probably true. We don't know much about everything unless you were there. And so it's a good way to disarm people, to open the door for a new conversation. The best thing you can do is get people to start sharing, to start talking honestly and listen. Because a lot of the times people who become very entrenched in their political beliefs, and that's like not their job, it gives them a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. So questioning these strongly held beliefs can put them in a place of defensiveness for themselves and their tribe. And so you want to avoid that as much as possible if you want to establish common ground with someone. Because if they believe something, they likely believe it because it was presented to them in a persuasive argument where emotions were involved. And so that idea, though it's political, and maybe it can be refuted with straight up facts, you're not dealing with the facts. You're dealing with the emotion, especially because if you're having this conversation with someone in your life that you're close with, now there's this element of what does this mean for our relationship with each other? And that's where emotions get, tense as well. And so I'm not saying everyone should be doing this over the Thanksgiving table. You should just do this in your life. When someone says something that you're like, oh, that's a dumb political joke, that's a dumb political assumption, you can ask them about it. Oh, what do you mean by that? And then have a conversation. You can use AAR. But having this knowledge and knowing that human beings can sometimes be led astray is fine. We've all believed something that's not true before. My boyfriend, to mess with me the other day, said, with a photo of Christopher Columbus, did you know that he's Javier Bardem's great-great-great-great-great-grandson? And Christopher Columbus looks a little bit like Javier Bardem, okay? So I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then he started laughing, and I knew he got me. But I believed it. Why wouldn't I? Okay. We're capable of being lied to, is what I'm saying. And there's no shame when there's billions of dollars going into our political system to persuade people to feel one way or another about a political issue in America. There's no shame in coming across a piece of media that might lead you down a path that's not fully true. That's not fully something you want to believe. That's not something you should believe. It doesn't benefit you to feel that way about that thing, but some corporation paid for it to come across your screen. And so we have to be more forgiving of ourselves and each other in that kind of information media space. Because think about the corporate conglomerates that control our media. There's 5 companies that control the majority of our media environment. There are companies that own 60% or have televisions in 60% of households in the United States. They run the stations on those televisions. When we're in that environment where there's that much consolidation of corporate media control, of course you're going to get pushed ideas where there's an agenda. And it's not something you would believe if you started from scratch and decided, I'm going to make up how I feel about this issue. Okay, so that's what I have to say about that. I can do more videos like this of other strategies, other ways to engage with people. Let me know. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stuff. Okay, love you, bye.